Hi, it's Dre Griggs with Obsidian Wisdom. Today we'll be answering the question, why does personal finance depend upon personal behavior? So we talk about personal finance, right? Most people talk about that. There's tons of personal finance, like gurus and experts and things of that nature. And when you meet with a financial professional, a financial planner, a financial advisor, and you start discussing some of your personal goals and how money relates to it, it often ties into our behavior. When I say our behavior, if you guys know me, you already know I'm talking about our wisdom of experiences, our discipline, our ability to get ourselves to do what we need to do when we know we need to do it, and our ability to keep ourselves from doing what we shouldn't do because we know we shouldn't do it. And when you're discussing how do I convince myself on a daily basis to do what is going to benefit me long term, knowing that the short term is going to feel really good, but the long term is going to feel even better. And you have to have this discussion with yourself. There are going to be daily decisions that you have to make where you have to remind yourself, this isn't that important to me. This is not what I really want. And when we discuss that, we're going to go into three aspects of why your behavior overall becomes more important than anything else when it comes to your ability to succeed with personal finance. Most entrepreneurs and families worry about money, so we created the Wisdomites framework to help you eradicate financial stress, generate a passive income, and build a prosperous retirement strategy. So the first thing you want to do, and a lot of them have to do with your internal confidence. What is it that's motivating you? Some would say your why, is you really have to set a number. It's not this idea that I'm always going to compare what I have with what someone else has, that if I put a plan together and my stocks have a 10% return year over year, and I felt really good about that until my friend told me that they had a 100% return because they invested in a meme stock like GameStop or something, or they were in like crypto or something and they had these huge returns, and now I don't feel as good about my 10%. Or it's like this idea that everybody feels really good about their personal situation until they find out about someone else's. I think I heard in a book, I'm trying to think what it is. I believe it was The Psychology of Money. And they talk about like you sit at this table and all of you are working. You just got this new job. Everybody got this job. And this particular income that you got is, let's say it's double what you had in your previous role. So you felt really good about it. But then you sit down and you find out that someone else doing the same role is making an extra $20,000 a year over you. Heck, it could probably be $5,000 a year over you. And that's going to eat away at you on a regular basis. You're going to be sitting there feeling like they take advantage of me, they jip me, they rip me off. And it's not really a discussion of whether or not they did. It's just a reminder that you felt really good about a decision that you made, a situation that you put yourself in, how you improved your overall life. But that changed once you had information about someone else's life, where you started comparing your results with their results. And then you didn't feel like your results were that good anymore. This is something that is often happening with each of us on a daily basis. It started when we were little kids. All of our signals came from our parents and our environment. So we just looked around, and as people gave us like smiles, we said, okay, I did good. Excellent. I'll keep doing that. As people frowned and were frustrated, we said, okay, I don't think that's what I should do anymore. And then you kind of took a step back. You want to be able to, of course, read the room, but at the same time, it shouldn't change the overall feeling that you have and cause you to change your plan. You shouldn't quit your job because you found out that someone else was making maybe an additional $5,000. You shouldn't change your investment philosophy just because someone was able to make a 50% return in a lightning in a bottle scenario. You should decide what makes the most sense for you. There is such a thing as enough. We're not collecting money for the sake of collecting money. Money is a tool that you use to build comfort, to, I would say, express your values and your morals. As far as how you allocate your money, what causes you show are important to you, what things matter to you with your life. And so if you needed $1 million, then your goal should be to get to $1 million in a certain amount of time, and then you get there. If someone else's goal requires them to get $5 million and they have to make different decisions with their plan, just because they have the results in the short term doesn't mean they're going to have the results in the long term. Just because you see the end result doesn't mean that they actually took the path that that you're thinking. It doesn't mean that they were successful the entire time. It could just be the most recent time. They could have lost every year trying to pick these lightning in a bottle stocks for the past 10 years, and this was the first time that it worked out for them. So should you make a change in your plan based on that little bit of information? And I would say no. If you took the time to put a plan together that matches your needs and your goals and your timeline, then you should stick with that plan. The second reason that personal finance is heavily influenced by your behavior is it really is a long-term game. And what that ultimately means is if you look at the stock market and you were to break it into sectors where we had like technology and energy, or you had like financial industries and you had construction, where you had healthcare. I mean, there's lots of sectors. If you were looking over a 30-year span, you will find that the sector that is the number one in the stock market changes on a regular basis. And the sector that is worse off changes as well. That is very rare and uncommon for the healthcare sector to have a great decade where if you started on 1 year and then that would also be the second and third and fourth and fifth. It's actually much more common for a sector to be number one year and the next year they drop and they're somewhere on the bottom half because our economy ebbs and flows. There are reasons that certain sectors do really good. If you were looking at like COVID and the healthcare spending and the vaccines and things like that, you would say, okay, if I'm looking at the healthcare industry, right, if you're just like planning long term, you would say the healthcare industry looks really good from like 2018 to 2022 or something like that. So I'm going to put all my money in healthcare. Well, when there's not a significant like healthcare issue or crisis going on, well, what do you think is going to happen to healthcare? And it's probably going to go back down to earth. Now, granted, there are cycles where healthcare was also up with the H1N1, like swine flu, like 2010. So there are things that happen where it brings it back in a cycle, but it doesn't mean that you should just make that decision. You may have the same feeling when it comes to like some technology stocks where in the 90s, the technology boom, you were like, oh, we have to be in that industry. But then things kind of slowed down for a little bit. And so you want to make sure that you're not just jumping around with whatever the shiny object is, that you have a long-term approach. And the only way that you're going to be able to stick to your long-term plan is really having confidence in the design that you currently have. If you're just waking up and looking at like something on CNBC or like the Wall Street Journal or just reading or watching whatever that you're looking to get your information, they're going to be making decisions every single day where they're like, this is a great stock today. This is a horrible stock tomorrow. This is the next best thing today. And I don't know who recommended that tomorrow. And if you jump and ebb and flow with them, you're going to find yourself winning, a few times, but you're not going to be able to put together the string of wins that you need. Then if you look at just the numbers overall, I think it says like if you were to miss the best 7 days of the last like 30 years, that you end up significantly reducing your return to where you almost break even. And in some cases, if you miss like the best like 10 days over the last like 30 years, that you end up sometimes losing money. And so you have to be able to say, I'm going to choose certain companies, certain industries. I believe that this is going to work out long term. And then you will follow that mantra, right? If you've ever read or listen to anything that Warren Buffett says, he often talks about value investing. And when you look at value investing, they always talk about, is there a moat? Is there something about this company that makes it special? Something that makes it difficult for you to replicate and steal something from them? Do they have like patents or trade secrets? Or is it management? Do you feel really good about management where you believe what they're doing? You should read the annual reports to see if they're saying the truth to you. And then, how much cash flow do they have? How do they feel about debt? Right? How many years in a row have they had success and profits, earnings? Right? These are things that you would be looking at when you decide a company. You don't decide a company just because someone had showed up on a TV show and they said to do this. You don't decide a company because someone is telling you, hey, I just made 10% in 2 weeks. You should jump on in. Because it just doesn't really work that way. You want to be able to have that behavior understanding that I'm making a plan and I'm going to stick to it. I'm doing it for a particular reason, and I'm not going to catch a case of FOMO, the fear of missing out, just because someone else is having a good week. because we're not trying to have a good week. We're trying to have good years. We're trying to have great years. And years requires you to be a little bit more strategic in your approach. If you have any additional questions about retirement planning, I invite you to check out my free retirement planning video training at obsidianwisdom.com/training. In it, I give you the entire Wisdometric framework that I use with my clients to help them eradicate financial stress, generate a passive income, and build a prosperous retirement strategy. So the third aspect of behavior that affects our overall financial performance and our personal finance is going to be just keeping that positive mindset and that positive attitude. If you have been investing in anything, if you've invested in businesses, or you've invested in real estate, or you invested in the stock market, or you've just loaned $5 to a family friend or something like that, then you know that you don't always get your money back. That there is going to be a time where you're going to pick the wrong stock, you're going to pick the wrong friend to loan money to, you're going to pick the wrong, time to build and invest in a company or real estate, but you can't allow that to deter you. Now, the numbers say that we feel significantly more pain from losing money than the joy we feel from making money. And as a result, most of us, when we start losing money, we end up saying, okay, I'm just going to take all of my money out. I'm going to remove everything. But if you think about it, that is technically you selling low, right? Like whatever you bought the stock at, if the stock was $100 when you bought it and it dropped to $80 and you're like, okay, I lost $20. Let me just sell it at $80 so that I don't lose any more money. Right, that's technically you locking in a $20 loss. So you are selling low and you've bought high. So that ends up being a disaster recipe when it comes to your finances. You have to be able to say, look, okay, there are going to be times that I'm going to make good choices. There's going to be times that maybe I misread a financial report. Maybe the intel that I had gathered wasn't as sound as I thought it was. And it's going to be a learning experience. And that's ultimately why wisdom ends up being so important, why it's even a part of my practice, is even in the name. It's one of my core values. I believe that wisdom is like this idea of wishing for more wishes. If you have wisdom, then you have the ability to create certain experiences as you learn from your own mistakes and other people's mistakes. And so it just keeps giving to me. So if you, let's say, picked the wrong stock, what was the reason that it was the wrong stock? Was it something that you misread? Was it something in the cash flows that you missed? Maybe you didn't look at the footnotes. Was it that you went with your gut a little bit too much? Or maybe you didn't go with your gut and you were looking at it too technically. Whatever it is, you should write that down, keep that information, and then you'll do better next time. It's not a sign that says this is not meant for me. This was totally a waste of my time. I'll never do that again. It's more of a sign that says, hey, I don't have all the information that I thought I did, and I learned something and I'll do better next time. The best people in any industry, in any career, in any profession are normally going to be the people that have been doing it longer. They have more wisdom through their experiences, more understanding through their failures, and they have more knowledge through the length of time that they have been seeing different scenarios. And so if you look at it that way, I think I remember reading that Picasso had drew a picture on a napkin, and he told the person it was going to be $10,000 or something for that. And they said, why would it be $10,000 for you to, draw a picture on a napkin? And he said, well, me drawing a picture on a napkin, right? That's $2. But the wisdom, the skill, and the understanding and the beauty that I have learned, well, that has taken me decades to build that. That's what you're really paying for. You're paying for my understanding and the wisdom that I've gained in this industry. The same holds true really across most things. It's the value that they give you. It's the same with a plumber. You and I, we can go on YouTube. We can spend hours trying to figure things out. And sometimes we will, but sometimes we won't. And if we have to call a plumber, they may come in and they solve the problem in 2 minutes. And then they're like, but the bill is going to be the same. They told you it'd be $200 to come out. And you're like, but you've been here for 2 minutes. I'm like, well, that's true. And it is true. But it's because of the value that they provide you. The value is the experiences that they gain where they know immediately what the problem is just based on the little bit of information that you've given them. The same is also true with financial planning. A lot of the time, the information that we provide you is readily available. We're not reinventing the wheel. But we spend enough time, at least a good one, a fiduciary, we spend enough time in the learning and the reading and the understanding and the constant growth and maturation where the value is there in the results. And so you want to be able to keep that same positive outlook where, yeah, you're going to have things that go, let's say, less than stellar along the way. But as you make small tweaks in your plan without just completely giving up and thinking that this is a sign that it's just going to get worse and worse and worse, you'll be able to learn a lot. Now you have to fight that urge because we all, as we mentioned, we all would rather avoid pain than find pleasure. So you have to be able to really hone it in, control yourself, because if you pull it all out and lock in your losses, well, there's a high chance that you may not ever start investing again. You may never take the leap again, right? And so as they always say, you get punched in the mouth, and it's not really a question of whether you'll get punched. It's a question of whether you get up. And so on that, Wisdomites, I always appreciate our time together. If you have any additional questions, I invite you to leave them in the comments. I'll be there to answer them for you. But remember, wisdom is asking the right questions to allow yourself to get the right answers. Keep asking those questions and you will keep getting those answers. Continue blessings.